October 1978. The final bell has already rung in a small high school tucked deep into rural Nebraska. Lockers are quiet. Hallways echo with emptiness. In one classroom, an English teacher remains seated at her desk while the afternoon sun stretches across the chalkboard. She pulls out a sheet of lined notebook paper and writes a single sentence at the top. Dear Mr. Carson. It's meant to be simple, just an assignment, nothing more. She plans to hand it out the next morning to her 23 students and ask each of them to write one honest question to Johnny Carson, the man they see every night at 10:30, the most recognizable face in America, the undisputed king of late-night television. She doesn't expect a reply. Why would she? Johnny Carson receives thousands of letters every week. But 2 weeks later, an NBC delivery van pulls up in front of the school. The driver unloads 3 large boxes into the front office. And inside those boxes is something that will permanently change how 23 teenagers see themselves and their future. What Johnny Carson sends isn't just a response. It's a message that will follow them for the next 46 years. This is that story. What no one knew at the time is how close that letter came to disappearing forever. It arrived at NBC studios in Burbank on a Tuesday morning, stacked among nearly 300 other envelopes. Fan mail, joke submissions, requests for autographs, appearance pitches. Most of them would get the same routine reply, if any at all. Johnny Carson's assistant worked through the pile like she did every week. Until she noticed one envelope. Plain. Handwritten. Postmarked from Nebraska. No agent. No letterhead. No show business polish. Just careful handwriting. She placed it on Johnny Carson's desk, between a coffee mug and that evening's script. Most letters never made it that far. Johnny picked it up. 3 pages, lined notebook paper. The letter began simply. My name is Margaret. I teach English at a small high school in western Nebraska. I have 23 students. Most are children of farmers. Many have never left this county. To them, the world feels very far away. Carson kept reading. We watch your show every night. It's the only window these students have into a life beyond cornfields and cattle ranches. They watch how you recover when jokes fail. They see how you treat nervous guests with kindness. They see mistakes and how you keep going anyway. Johnny set his coffee down. They aren't just laughing, they're learning. That sentence stopped him. The letter continued. I gave my students an assignment, write one real question to Johnny Carson. Something honest. Something about success, fear, failure, or believing in yourself. I'm writing to ask if you might answer them, not publicly, just in writing, so they know someone out there sees them. At the bottom were 23 handwritten questions, each in different handwriting. Some shaky, some rushed, some barely legible, but everyone sincere. How do you stay calm when things go wrong on live television? David, 16. Do you ever feel like you're not good enough? Jennifer, 17. How did you leave Nebraska and make it? Michael, 15. What do you do when you fail? Sarah, 14. Johnny Carson folded the letter and sat quietly for nearly 10 minutes. Because Johnny Carson was from Nebraska. Norfolk, Nebraska. He left at 18 and never looked back, built a career, became the most powerful man in television. But until this moment, he had never thought about what people were learning while they watched him. Now 23 kids from small-town Nebraska were studying his failures like lessons. And they were asking the exact questions he once had. Johnny Carson spent 3 days thinking about that letter. He was 52 years old. 16 years into hosting The Tonight Show. Over 4,000 episodes. Presidents, movie stars, legends. He had made America laugh through war, scandal, and celebration. But he had never thought of himself as a teacher. And now he couldn't stop thinking about being 17 years old, sitting in Nebraska, wondering if someone from nowhere could ever matter. He picked up the phone. Fred, he said to his producer. How much would it cost to fly 23 students from Nebraska to Burbank? There was silence. For what? I want them here, a field trip. I want 3 hours with them. Johnny, that's not in the budget. I'm not asking NBC to pay. I am. 2 weeks later, Johnny Carson personally paid for flights, buses, meals, and studio access. Then he sat down and did something no one expected. He wrote 23 handwritten letters, one for every student. To David. I don't stay calm. I panic. I've just learned to hide it. That comes from failing in front of millions and realizing the world doesn't end. To Jennifer. That feeling of not being good enough, it never goes away. I feel it every night. Successful people aren't fearless, they just perform anyway. To Michael. Leaving Nebraska was easy. Remembering it was harder. Don't forget where you came from. It keeps you real. To Sarah. I fail on television 5 times a week. I just move on. That's not courage, it's the job. Then he wrote one final letter. He invited them to NBC studios. Not for publicity. Not for television. Just to talk. November 8, 1978. 23 teenagers board an airplane for the first time. Palm trees replace cornfields. Traffic replaces silence. Glass buildings replace wooden barns. NBC Studio 1 feels unreal. Inside, under the stage lights, sits the desk they've watched their entire lives. And waiting for them, already seated, is Johnny Carson. No suit. Just a sweater. Margaret walks in first and drops her purse. Johnny stands. Thank you for your letter. The students sit silently, overwhelmed. One of them, Jennifer, starts crying. Johnny smiles gently. This is your studio today. He tells them the truth about television, about mistakes, panic, fear. He remembers their names. Then a quiet boy in the back raises his hand. Why did you do this? He asks. We're nobody. Johnny walks down the aisle and kneels in front of him. You are not nobody, he says softly. Where you're from doesn't limit you, it prepares you. The boy nods through tears. That night, they watch Johnny Carson perform live. They see him miss jokes, recover, keep going. They understand. One photograph is taken after midnight. Johnny stands in the center. His hand rests on the boy's shoulder. The inscription reads, November 8, 1978, the night Johnny told us we weren't nobody. Johnny Carson never talked about it. But for the next 14 years, he quietly repeated it, bringing students from small towns to NBC, reminding them they mattered. Those students grew up. Teachers, nurses, producers, leaders. And they carried one lesson with them for life. Where you're from doesn't define your limits. It defines your strength. Johnny Carson didn't just make America laugh. He taught a generation how to stand tall. And that lesson outlived the show.